Welcome back, everyone, to the Single Parents Network podcast with Coach Nrgy. I am the Single Parents Coach. I work with single fathers, single mothers, and those who date single parents. This podcast is where I will share valuable content on all matters of the heart and various life issues that single fathers, single mothers tend to face. Some of those types of topics or issues may consist of relationships, marriages, divorces, time management, work-life balance, you name it. And so here on this channel, we will share tips, strategies, techniques on things that you can take action on today. This week's guest is Becca, and we are going to discuss various topics around special education. We're also going to share insights into the challenges and triumphs that are faced by students with disabilities. And we're going to talk about the power of resilience and advocacy. Becca, thank you so much for joining us this week. And please introduce yourself to our listeners and let us know what your experience is with the topics that we will be discussing today.
Sure. So I'm Rebecca Engle. I was nonverbal until the age of 5. Doctors told my mom I would never do anything you could train a monkey to do. I was believed that I would never speak, never be independent, and never be verbal. Uh, About 15 years later now, I am a certified special education teacher working on my master's and my doctorate, and working with special ed students and special ed populations.
Wow. Nonverbal until 5?
Yes.
Wow. Um, what causes that in your situation? What caused that?
Sure. So I had language delays, pervasive developmental disorder, which now falls under the autism spectrum, didn't back then, does now. They did want to diagnose me with autism, but autism back then was like a woo label, you know. Um, and so my mom was like, let's see, you know. So they diagnosed me with pervasive developmental disorder, and that's really what kind of caused most of my language delays. I also had the speech apraxia, which caused my voice to have, speech impediments and issues as well. And then um, I think the only reason I'm really talking today is because my mother worked and worked and worked and worked and got me to find my voice. And not every kid and not every adult will be able to find their voice just because there are disabilities that prevent that. But I think that the reason I found it at 5 and it wasn't so much later as well is because she was there fighting for me.
Absolutely. Do you remember whenever your mother was going through whatever training and lessons that she was working with you on? Do you remember any that stood out in particular that may have really helped you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so specifically with trying to figure out why I was delayed, both my brothers were, one was about to be in school and then the other was already in school. He was in middle school when I was born. So he was, um, or elementary school, late elementary school. So, or when I was 5 or so, he was in middle school, late elementary. So when, you know, she was working with me, the doctors were kind of just like, oh, just don't compare her to her brothers, like she's a different person. But my mom started kind of journaling every single movement I did with my body. I mean, as little as like me raising my finger up. Like it could be tiny movements. She journaled every single solitary food I ate. She journaled how I reacted to every book, how I reacted to every show, how I reacted to literally anything in front of me, and wrote down the ingredients of everything I ate, and pretty much tracked to see what behaviors changed when I consumed different things, what behaviors changed when things were put in front of me, and prior to the big delays, I had seizures as a baby. So there was also questions around that and that causing all of it. But she kind of really just watched for those tiny little behaviors that I presented and journaled it all. And so she was always experimenting and reading to me and putting me in situations where I had to show a skill of some sort or, reading, whether it was reading to me or, me trying to read or attempting to read. She constantly was paying attention to me. And I think that is what I most remember.
Yeah, it definitely takes patience and being an active parent in order to have been able to do her part
Mhm.
in your growth, your development to where you are today. So that's awesome. You kept mentioning food and diet. Do you still watch or are you mindful of the things that you eat today? And if so, what would be an example of something that wouldn't be good for you to eat?
So food coloring was my trigger as a little girl, and that's what we discovered. And back then, it triggered, behaviors. I would punch, kick, scream at the top of my lungs, and I would, turn into a little devil. I mean, it was crazy. Like I beat my mom up with a suitcase at the age of 4, and that was after having Di. Um, and so it was little things like that that really just set me off. Um, and so now, like even to this day, I rarely try to eat food coloring. Now it just makes me a little red and more emotional. Kind of like a woman would get on her period. Like, like a period cramp angry. Um, or like hangry, for the men that are listening. But I think really back then, I didn't know how to communicate, so I didn't have any other coping mechanism to the poison that food dye is that was in my body, red and yellow dye specifically.
Yeah, I think that's definitely important to share for the parents that are listening, being mindful of the foods being a part of the behaviors that their children are displaying. Sometimes we don't think about it, being something as simple as food that we're eating. So, and those snacks that are out there, the ones that are, super colorful. So, yeah, I'm glad that you shared that, the red and yellow dye in particular. So, you in your intro, you mentioned something about a doctor or someone that stated something. Did you say monkey? Something about a monkey? What can you repeat
Mhm.
that and then explain what you meant by that?
Yeah, so every time my mom took me to the doctors, my therapist kind of pushed me around like, oh, she'll never succeed, kind of cram me in the corners, kind of just first they suggested that my mom go find a hobby out of all the hours I'd be in therapy. When my mom exclaimed that that was, her hobby was going to be my life. Um, the other therapist that I had at the time told my mom that I would never do anything you could train a monkey to do. Um, so I was less able and less performing than a creature. Um, and it's stuck with her. Every time we talk about my story, I feel like that's like one of the first things I feel like I need to share because it kind of puts it in perspective, not only what the doctor said, but how delayed I really was for someone who can see me now and sees me as this, completely neurotypical person. And I said that with quotations for those on audio. But you know, I had these strong behaviors and that's what they saw in me. And I mean, it's absolutely horrifying to think about a doctor saying that to me even now, but that's that's exactly what they meant was that I was literally of the performance or less of than a creature or an animal.
Yeah. Ugh, that that's disgusting. Ah, I don't like that at all because words are so powerful, and I'm just happy that your mom and even you at that age that neither one of you said, okay, well, I guess that's it. Okay, I guess that's what we'll accept. So kudos to you. Kudos to your mom. So let's talk about can you share some insights into the challenges and the triumphs that are faced by students with disabilities?
Sure. So I think the thing that I see most is lack of understanding. Um, if I fidget with, if I pick up a marker and I fidget with it like this, I I see kids do that, and um I think about things like that, and they're like, "Oh, you're not paying attention, you're not focused, you don't care about my assignment," or um and it's like, no, they're doing that so they can focus on you, like if I'm not doing this constantly or like, trying to do something with myself when I'm learning about something that doesn't highly interest me, I'm falling asleep. Like, so, and I see that with my students too, I gave all my students like a little wristband with poppets, if you're familiar with those. And I had a teacher who told him to take it off because it was a distraction because he was doing this, like tapping it as he worked. And I was like, now I have to write that into the IEP for all of your students because fidgeting is now considered a distraction. And we've seen this kid's scores and grades go up since he started using that fidget and other students as well. And I was like, so is it really a distraction or do you see it as one because it's not something you do? So I think that's a big one. Needing time to actually process the information too. A lot of people on the spectrum, especially me, we have auditory processing disorder, which is basically our ability to take what you just told us and put it here. So the best way to put it is if you tell me go do your laundry, then go shower, then go, do your homework, and then go to bed. The only thing I just processed out of that was the first thing. So let me finish the first thing and then tell me what to do next. Or by the time I finish that first thing, I'm going to forget everything in the order of what you told me to do. I may remember that I have to go to bed, I have to shower, and look, I already forgot what I just said. Um, but I may remember that I have to do those four tasks, but I won't remember the order in which I have to do them. And so I think that's really the biggest um blinders I see, or the biggest, I don't know, assumptions and stereotypes I see, is that these things are like things that we have to do to actually succeed, and they're seen as punishable or, you know, a crime almost. And it's like, no, like, um, I have to do this in order to make sure that you're a priority.
In that type of situation, so using the example of someone giving a student or a child a list of, okay, do this, then do this, then do this and that, what can a parent do to help with keeping the focus, keeping things in order? What can a parent do?
Visuals, because it's not a visual processing disorder, right? So if you tell me go color with this marker that's blue and then go color with a green marker and you physically show me a blue and green marker, I'm going to remember this. But when you don't use the visual with the auditory, it goes in and out. And I see that even with note taking as well. Um, I was the worst note taker as a kid. Still am. I'm working on my master's degree halfway through it, and if a professor doesn't give me visuals of a theory or I can't find a visual, that theory is out of the brain and in the trash. Or I can't find a real life example of the theory being used. I had to take a educational psych class, and the only theory I remember is the one where we had to beat up a doll. And the reason is because I literally remember beating up a doll.
Got it. Makes sense. And so with that, so you did mention some of the challenges being that there's a lack of understanding, challenges being that there's more time that's needed to process information. So let's talk about some of the triumphs.
Sure. Just triumphs of
Yeah, any triumphs that are that students with disabilities have overcome or that they faced?
Sure. So I think it goes really back to the fidgeting, getting attacked for that, the body movements, the ability to have to, get up, walk around sometimes. Um, Transitions are very, very rough. Um, Meaning like when you tell a child with, a disability, all right, now we have to go to PE, now sit down, now we have to go to gym, now we have to go to this, now we have to go to that. That kid is that constant transitioning is just a trigger. It's a constant change of environment, a constant change of stimulation. I mean, even walking in from a classroom where it's super loud and then you walk outside and then you walk back in, that outside is quiet. You hear different forms of stimuli, whether it's the hallway and the water fountain or whether it's cars, depending on, situation. But that change is such a sensory off-put. Um, and it's hard to kind of put it into a brain of someone who isn't in the position, but it kind of feels like a punch in the face. And it's just, like if every time you had to walk a room, you had to think about being punched in the face, you probably wouldn't want to walk into that room. So transitions are very, very tough for us. Not being understood. My classroom now, I'm a resource teacher, so I only have kids in there 3 times a day, and then the other times I'm in other classrooms working with kids. But even when I'm in the other classrooms, they're like, "Can we go to your room because I feel more comfortable in your room?" And it's because I have, the flexible seating and it's very calm. I don't have stuff all over the walls. My room's not super colorful. It's very like boho, brown, green, very the lights are off. And so like lighting is a trigger for students on the spectrum or students with disabilities, ADHD even. Um, like the grocery store is like my biggest nightmare. Um, like I mean, I can go in there for about an hour, and after that, I'm like, oh, I could go for a nap. Like I'm super tired after the grocery store. Um, And I've even gone in there to pick up one thing for myself, and I'm like speed lightning through the grocery store. And I'm almost embarrassed, it looks like, to even be in the grocery store. But I literally get back to my car and I jump like crazy. So, anywhere with lighting like that, even, the PE or um the classroom, even sometimes with the bright lights, it's very overstimulating for a child with a disability or autism specifically.
Yeah, I want you to speak to, let's just say, parents as they're going to the grocery store and their
Mhm.
child is with them. What are some suggestions or tips that you can give and share with a parent who has their child walking beside them
Mhm.
to help that trip to the grocery store be, I guess, more manageable for both of them?
Well, noise canceling headphones are a plus. They sell headphones that you can wear over the ears that are noise canceling. They even have earbuds now that are noise canceling, if they're embarrassed to wear giant headphones. Um, some states, not all, have sensory friendly times to go to the grocery store, meaning that the lights are dimmer, there's less people. It's typically early in the morning or late at night. If your store doesn't have that, definitely choose a time to go to the grocery store that isn't insane. Like, if you go on noon on a Saturday, like your kid's not gonna do well no matter what you give that child. And that's just part of having a child with a disability. You have to think about things like that. You know, go during a time where, it's 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning or 8 p.m. after the long work and school day. Most people are home by then. They've done their after work shopping. Uh, so consider the time of day and consider the outside light, right? That's coming in through the windows of the store on top of the bright lights and the uh consider how much you actually have to pick up from the freezer section and the fridge section and when you're going to do it because if you do it at the start of the grocery trip and now they're adjusting to the light, they're adjusting to the noise, and they're adjusting to a different temperature. Because when you walk in, it's one temperature, and then when you go to that aisle, it's 20 degrees lower. So think about that too. Think about that adjustment. My biggest like trigger is when I have to go to like Sam's and they have like the walk-in freezers where all the stuff is like cold when you walk into it and you have to like grab stuff and the whole entire room for this cold stuff is like 20 degrees. It like that setting change is just it overstimulates me and I know how to hold back a stim, but most children do not.
Yeah. Let's say if sticking with the grocery store scenario, let's say other shoppers that are around,
hmm
and maybe my scenario that I'm thinking of now may work better with an older child or maybe even an adult. So
hmm
answer it based off of whichever age range makes sense. But my question is, if someone that has a disability or has autism is in the grocery store and they're not dealing with it well, what suggestions could you give to just anyone that may be in the store just as another shopper for them to maybe help with or assist that person that has the disability, that person that's not dealing with the everything that's going on in that environment, just the general public, like, is there anything that you suggest that other people do or maybe don't do?
Mhm. Give the child space, first of all. Staring at the child and trying to find solutions. You don't know that child. Every child with autism is different. I mean, even I'm, a special ed teacher. This is my specialty. This is what I know best. This is what I study. And if a child was having a meltdown in the store, I wouldn't be like, oh, I can help right now, right? That parent is that child's best advocate and they're in a moment, right? So my advice comes when that child has calmed down, right? My advice comes when they're not in the moment panicking, trying to figure out their kid. Um, so first off, just step away. Don't judge. Let the child breathe. Don't go get people involved, right? Uh, one of the complaints I hear most, especially on like local, advocacy groups is, well, my child had a meltdown, everyone stared. And I'm like, please don't stare. And you may hear the child scream, you may hear something. Um, we don't wear, tattoos that say we're autistic. So don't, you know, assume either. There's so many wide ranges of needs. It could have been anxiety, it can be PTSD. Um, you don't know, if you're in an aisle and that sets off, someone that you look like, you have no clue why that child's breaking down like that. Um, and it may be the noise of your conversation that was just that little bit of extra stimuli that set that kid off. So step away and see if, he or she can now naturally calm down. Because it may have been something this tiny. Um, But yeah, that's my advice is literally just let the parent do what the parent needs to do.
Yeah. I'm glad I asked that question because I'm one of those people naturally. It's like, how can I help? Because I can
Mhm.
only imagine, being a parent and, your child is having a moment. And it's
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, I don't know if that parent would want someone to come in and help, or would that parent prefer to just let everybody keep going, keep doing what you were doing, mind your own business, walk away and just let me and my child handle what's going on right now. Just give us the time that we need. So I'm glad that I asked because I didn't know if stepping in, some way somehow would be helpful or if it would make things worse. So glad that you shared that.
Yeah.
Now, kind of thinking, let's go back to the home environment. You kind of gave some examples of like in a classroom where, having too many colors on the wall wouldn't be, great, a great idea to have, or, the lighting being as bright as it is. So when it comes to the home, what tips can you give to parents around like decor for the child in their room
Mhm.
and or in like the common areas of the home? What tips would you suggest for parents to consider?
Well, think about your child and their behavior because I know like there's some children on the spectrum that if you hang stuff on your walls, everything on your walls is going to be broken. During that meltdown, that child will take everything off the walls and throw it. And it's not intentional, but hanging the $70 glass frame, the $300 painting right above the couch probably isn't your best bet. As for the child's room, let the child have control of it as much as they can. I'll tell you personally that my walls were always covered and stuff, but they were all stuff that meant something to me. Like I didn't just have a bunch of like letters and funny sayings and quotes. Like they were all things that I connected to. Awards I won, funny things, and it still is like that, hence why my camera's blurred. I my room like is just printouts of awards I've won and things I've achieved and funny sayings, and it's all stuff I chose to hang up. And that's how my room's always been, right? If I don't want it, I can take it down. Um, and then for the purpose of bedding, and comfort, uh nothing fleece, nothing wool. Personally, those textures at least set me off. Every person's different. Um, but let your child have as much say as you feel like is affordable to you and their sheets and their bedding. I didn't sleep with sheets on until I was about 20 years old, which was about 2 years ago. Because I didn't like the texture sheets. And even now, like the top of my like the one side of my bedding, it has like stitches, like diamonds. And if my sheets and that aren't connecting, I get set off. And it's something so silly, and I know how to communicate that, but like a kid wouldn't be able to tell you that without making sense. You know what I mean? If they're completely nonverbal. So things like that, let a kid have a say in, how they sleep, and what their textures and things that they like. Because I will tell you, certain textures make my teeth immediately start hurting and making me want to jump and flap like a bird. It just is. Couch material, same thing. Microfiber is my best friend. I hate that cotton. Ugh. Um, but yeah, that's just like those tiny things, really, textures and uh, calm colors are essential, personally. Have a calm down room too. Like when you're planning a home, like have a room that, and you can have stuff in it, but like have a room that that kid can go to if that's their room, great, that they can go to and just be like, I don't want to deal with the world right now. Like, um, and I feel like with their, like if you have the ability to make it a room that isn't their room, it's better because when you go to your room, it kind of feels like a punishment as a kid. Like when you're like, go to your room, right? It feels almost like you're in trouble and that you are being locked away. But if you make another room of your house kind of feel like a sheltered, comfortable area, and that could be a second living room, an office room, there they have that space. I babysat a little boy and their office room was his calm down area. And he would lock himself in there and rip up foam. And that's all he wanted to do to calm down. And if that was the solution, and I taught him how to knit as well. So he like did that as like his calm down in his little calm down room. And he wasn't hurting anyone. His anger didn't come out on me or anybody else. So yeah.
Yeah. Some of those, it made sense. I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And others, I'm like, oh, wait, I didn't even think about that. I didn't even consider, that being something to think about. Your actual, your couch, your sofa, the material of it,
Hmm.
from, I don't know if leather and versus microfiber versus, cotton and
Hmm.
suede, like just actually thinking about all of that can
Hmm.
be something that's helpful with your child being able to be calm, when they're at
Yeah.
home. So, yeah,
Yeah. My car actually is leather, and I put a tablecloth over my leather seat every single day because I don't like my thighs touching it.
yeah. Oh my gosh. And that makes you think also, now that you mentioned car, for like those parents whose child still needs to go into like a car seat or a booster seat. And, when trying to put them in the seat, it's just like,
Hmm.
no,
Hmm.
that could be why. There's
Yep.
something about the touch, the feel, the material
Hmm.
against their skin.
Hmm. I hate seatbelts. I wear one because I have to, but they overstimulate the crap out of me.
Yeah. Do you have like, does it help if you have like one of those little pads that go, that you can add to it? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. My goodness. Okay. I'm learning a lot, and this is interesting for me. I definitely wanted to have you as a guest to help spread the knowledge and just empower, anyone who comes across this episode for, whether they are a parent or there's someone in their family or maybe a neighborhood kid or, whatever. Just to give us more information, more insight into the life of a child that may be autistic or that may have some sort of disability. And any of this information can be helpful. It will allow us to just kind of, pause and think, okay, what could be going on? What could be causing this person, this child to have a moment right now? So,
Hmm.
uh, I am enjoying this conversation so far. Okay, so there's one more thing that I do want us to discuss about the power of resilience and advocacy. What can you share with us around that area?
Yeah, so I'm actually writing a book on that, or a piece of a book on that. Um, the people in my life that were advocates and resilient and kind of just believed in my ability, even when I don't know if they actually saw it, because I'll never know. Those are the people that I look back to and I think about. And I think that that's why I'm such an advocate for special education people to become special education teachers. And I think that we need to focus on hiring people with disabilities as special education teachers because I think now like I can look at my kids and be like, I was you. And I can literally mean that. Like I don't mean, oh, I was just a kid. We've all been kids, but like I was talking to a kid the other day who was embarrassed to get extra help in math because of his dyslexia. And I was just talking to him about it and I was like, um, we were just talking, he's dyslexia and autism. And I was just talking to him about it and I was like, it's okay to like need this. And I was like, this was me. And like I showed him a picture of me actually struggling with math in the same grade level and me bawling on the math assignment. And it was, and I've shown my students my IEP. I'm like, you have one of these. And it's, that type of advocacy is an advocacy that not everyone can offer. It's being able to be like, guys, I've been here, look, and look at me now is an advocate that not every special education student will see. And so I guess making sure that your child with special needs has at least one person that they can talk to that has been there, whether it's their teacher or a friend of yours or a friend's child or is that's going to be your best advocate. and your strongest advocate, besides, of course, their own parents. But um, I think that for me, I had a lot of great people in my life and a lot of great advocates, but I never had anyone who I could be like, well, you're also neurodivergent or you're also disabled. Let's connect, I never had that. And I still, even to this day, do not have someone like that. And I'm 20, almost 22. Um, and so, but I think I've seen it in my students. Like, they are like, oh wow, you were literally like in the same exact situation. And you struggle with the same exact things, and now you're working on this form of education and all this stuff. And I think that is everyone's, I think at the end of the day, that is everyone's biggest advocate besides their parent. And resilience, just believe. I mean, I know it's hard to believe when your child's, a devil, which is what my mom's jokes around and called me when I was younger. Now, like she refers to me now, back then. Uh, she's like, "You were such a little devil," and I'm like, "I know." Um, but she believed in me. She advocated for me. She was at everything for me, and she did her best. And it. She was coming for two kids that were, reading at a college level by second grade. So, having me was such a, change. My brothers were just these nerds, and uh they were very, very smart and very, very intelligent. They were GT, they were gifted and talented. They were, and I was the sped kid. And so it was, but my mom never like made me feel like I was the sped kid. It was always, well, you can do that too. You can do that like your brothers too. Let's make you do it like that. And it helped. Of course, don't force your child to be like your other kids. That's not what I'm wanting. But if they want to do something like your other kids are doing, let them and let them attempt it.
Yeah, nice. From a parent perspective, what's one of the most basic, simplest things that they can do to connect with their child? So I don't know if it could be like, just hug on your child, or say, a certain word or phrase to them,
Hmm.
come down to their level and sing to them. Just in, with what in your experience, what's just something simple that a parent can do when they're just
Yeah.
trying to calm things down?
So I would say it really, with that, it's hard to answer because it really depends on the child and their type of autism. Um, I know I hate being touched. But there are other people with autism who want to be hugged and held all over, right? There's only certain few, many people who can touch me, and that's as an adult. But as a kid, do not lay your hands on me, do not hug me, do not give me a kiss, do not anything. And even in middle school, I remember receiving a hug from a friend and being like shaking for like 10 minutes. And she just was trying to be a friend. Like she had no harm meant, you know? And with all that being the case, I I feel like it really depends on the child because there's some kids that need you to get down on their level and talk to them. There's some kids that do need a hug and don't want you on their level. There's some kids who just want to hear silence, like just give them a minute, and that was me. Like I be quiet, like be quiet, let me think, let me focus, and I'm still that way. Um, there there's moments where I'm just like, if I could just, right, like put my headphones on and plug you out like that, that's what I need at the moment. But then there's other times where all I need is like a giant group of people surrounding me. Um, so I think it really depends on the child. Um, I guess the biggest way to get your child to try something, do something, I would say is incentives. But don't be like every time you do this tiny little thing, you get a, little tiny bit. It's more working towards it, like a paycheck, right? You go to work every day and you receive a paycheck. You don't get $10 every day. You do, but you don't. At the end of the month, you end up getting, your total. And doing little things like that, incentive rewarding, shows the child that it's worth their effort. Um, I have a little boy right now, and if he earns a little golden coin, he does his stuff for me. Just a golden coin, and then at the end of he earns them in his main classroom too. And once he gets this giant bucket, he gets to play like a game, and it's only 5 minutes of it. But he has to earn literally a full bucket that's like this, that's like, I don't even know, like 16 ounces big in order to get this. And so it's not like we're like, oh, every time you do, this much, you get an award. It's just making him show that it's worth that he tries.
So it's kind of like trial and error. So for a parent who may not have the experience, maybe, their first child, has a disability and they don't know what works for their
Hmm.
child yet.
Hmm.
So I guess it's like trial and error,
Hmm.
try. Okay. Okay. Good to know that not everything, and that's understandable, not everything works for, every single kid. What for some, a hug and an embrace would, be wanted. For another, it's like, no, don't touch me. That's going to make it worse. So again, you're sharing some very valuable information for parents and just again, all of us who's listening, whether we are a parent or not. These are just good tips for us to know, good insights for us to now be aware of anytime that we may come into a space where there's a child with a disability or an autistic child. So, super helpful. Now, you did mention book a few moments ago. I believe
Hmm.
that you have written a book, or is it still in progress, where it's called Step Into My Shoes? Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So, the pre-release is about mid-October. I'm just finishing up my illustrations and formatting. I'm very, very excited. It's about the day in the life of a child with autism going to school, and it's based on myself. So, obviously, it's not necessarily every child with a disability, but it's very focused on the emotions and the oversensitivities that a child may experience going through a day of school. And being lonely because their friends don't understand why they stim or different things like that. It's a piece I've been wanting to write very, very long time. Um, and the reason was when I was in high school, a teacher was trying to explain differences to a group of students. And I got to experience many different classrooms when I was learning how to teach. Um, and my senior year, a teacher was trying to teach differences and disabilities to a younger group of kids. And I was like, oh, well, there's ways to talk about that. And then I started looking and I was like, wow, like there's really not any books written by someone who has autism or a disability talking about this. You see the wheelchair and you see that, but you don't see the people who have autism like writing books about their own life. And if they do, it's like, this was my adult life to now, or my kid child life to now, and this is my biography, but it's not formatted for youth. And so she was trying to teach differences and she just differences amongst people. And when we see differences as a negative thing, is what she was specifically trying to teach, it can lead to harm. And so she talked about points in history where we've seen different things as very negative and people were hurt, killed, whatever. And she explained it in a very, kinder first grade friendly way. But it was like, if these kids haven't even learned what this is, or this part of history is, like, the Holocaust or slavery or any of those, or, discrimination, segregation, then how can they put it in the fields of someone with a disability, right? Like, you can't mix the two topics. And so I was trying to, but then I thought about it and I was like, well, there's not like there's tons of children's books written about how awful, the Holocaust was, or how awful segregation was, or and which is great, right? For the purpose of teaching those things, we don't want history to repeat itself. I started trying to figure out, like, what about autism? And there wasn't anything out there. And in my sophomore, junior year of college, I was a history major on top of my education degree, and I got to volunteer with refugee populations. And I had a classroom of 36 kids with 22 different languages. And I had to teach, and not even the same, like, ethnicity, culture, nothing, like not even similar. I had Uganda, I had parts of, like Eastern Europe, I had Ukraine, I had Mexico, I had Portugal, like it was, and don't get me wrong, it was eye-opening to learn about all of these, but like trying to teach this was woo, but this was for my history degree, not my education degree, and I had to teach them. And so I came to this professor and I was like, we need to make this a class. Like, I think every kid teacher should have to do this because it was eye-opening and it really taught me how to full body communicate. And if I had to do it with 36 languages, I could do it with two, or 22 languages. But if I had a kid from, Ukraine and a kid from Mexico in my class, now I would be able to teach them the same as my English learners, and that's, or my English natives, and that's important, and we didn't ever get that experience except with Spanish and English, you know. Um, and so she was like, actually, I did a book study on this and whatever, whatever, and it was really eye-opening. And she was like, you need to do one. And you need to find books good for kids with autism because like nobody's ever done that. And I was like, oh yeah, let's see, it's 3 years later, maybe something's been written. And I started looking and yet again, it was like there was stuff now, but it was like I'm the mom of an autistic child. I'm the dad, I'm the cousin, and it was like that's great. But if every book about, Christmas was written by someone who celebrates Hanukkah, not Christmas, are we really learning about Christmas or are we learning about the outside perspective of Christmas and how outside perspectives see Christmas? And so I was finally like, I'm going to change that. So this has been in the works since my senior year of high school. And that was 2020. So uh, I'm very, very excited to see where it goes. And hopefully in 2025, it's a best-selling book.
Oh my gosh, that is so exciting. Congratulations so far, even getting started.
Thank
And
you.
seeing that there was a void and you stepped up to fill that void. So I keep me posted on when that book comes out, when it's released, because you did mention the
Thank you.
pre-release will be in mid-October, right?
Yes. The pre-release will only be $1 more than the print cost, so I will be barely profiting. And then I'll raise the price. So get it then.
Exactly. Good job. Awesome. Well, I think this is a perfect time for us to segue into what I'm calling my little fun segment. Are you willing to answer maybe one or two questions for me?
Yes.
Awesome. Alrighty. So, my first question, and these are questions that you can just have fun. It has nothing to do with what we talked about today. And this is just an opportunity for our listeners to get to know a little bit more about you. So,
Sure.
my first question for you is, what is one fun or random fact about you?
Sure. So, I guess I knit. So that's my way of, I guess, stimming as well as I knit it out when I'm angry now. So, or when I'm overstimulated, I'll make a bajillion beanies. And that's actually how I started in the business world. And then people started telling me to speak and everything about my story because I advertised myself as a neurodivergent business owner.
Nice. Awesome. Alrighty. Next question. What is your biggest pet peeve?
Ooh, oh my. Ooh, that's a good one. I'm trying to think. I get annoyed by a lot. Um, um, Ooh, I think the best one I can say is when kids play around in stores. I was just thinking about this today, like when kids like, pick up random crap and play around with it. I'm like, I feel like we should make it law that every time a child picks something up in a store, they should have to pay for it. Like, because I don't know, like I'm on the spectrum and like every time I like like if my mom constantly told me, you see with your eyes, not with your hands, you see with your eyes, not with your hands. And like that was ingrained into my brain. And I remember her literally being like, tie your hands to your stomach while we go into the store. And she like put the fear in me that like dragons were gonna start popping out of items if I like touched anything. And I had this fear until I was like 13, right? And like not physically, but like I was like, oh gosh, if I touch something, that woman's voice is going to haunt me for the rest of my life. And my mom's, 4'11" and not very intimidating. I love the woman to death, but I was taller than her by 13. And yet alone, I was like, this woman's gonna sit on my shoulder and scream at me if I touch that bouncy ball. And I see, like I go to all these stores, I go to these places, and kids are like throwing toys across the room and playing with them. And I'm like, really? Like, your mom should have to pay for that now. So that's my pet peeve.
I'm sure the stores, the owners, the workers would agree. Because I'm sure there's less mess that they would have to pick up and clean up and organize. Good deal. Okay, I'm gonna give you one more question. So, what is one word that you would use to describe yourself?
Ooh, PG-13 or not?
Whatever you like.
Uh, I would honestly, um, I think for going, not PG-13. A lot of people have always told me that I'm a badass. Um, I feel like that's the simplest way to put it, not to boost my own horn. But um I encompass all of what a badass encompasses, and I mean that in the best way possible, right? Like, I mean, how many people are almost 22, almost with a master's and doctorate, right? Like, like and then like y'all just heard my story. Like, I'm a badass, and like I need to like believe that. And I think every woman in business and every woman in every career field needs to know that she's a badass.
Yes, that's right. You toot your own horn. Toot toot. Yes. Good stuff. Oh, well, I'm glad that we did that fun segment. Thank you so much for participating. And let's go ahead and let our listeners know if you have any final takeaways, any last nuggets of wisdom, or anything that you may want to add based off of what we've already talked about. Yeah, are there any last minute or last takeaways that you would like to share?
Sure. So you can find me published in multiple books on Amazon already. Despite my own book coming out, I have those books, and then um, I'm all over social media. Um, I You can find, me at Becca Engle or RE02.20. Stands for I was born in 2002 on the 20th of a month, aka this month. And yeah, um, I like to end all of my blabbing on every podcast with my favorite quote that was created by me. And it's pretty much Don't let people tear your stickers off. I think of every human being as a Rubik's Cube. And so we'll eventually solve a puzzle, but that puzzle may not be solved immediately. So solve your own puzzle. Don't rip your stickers off. Don't let other people rip your stickers off. Because once you solve the puzzle of a Rubik's Cube, just like yourself, a lot will be figured out and a lot will be in line.
I like that. I like that. Way to end. Yeah, keep ending all of your segments, your episodes that way, guys. Don't let people tear your stickers off. Solve your own puzzle. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my goodness, Becca, thank you. Thank you so much for just sharing again all the information from your perspective. And you're able to you're actually sharing it from multiple perspectives, which is really it's really important. It's important to hear you're able to speak from walking in those shoes, like your book, Step Into My Shoes, but then you're also able to speak from this as an educator, as someone who is actually working with other students and other people who have the disabilities as well. So keep up the great work. Everyone, make sure that you go and support Becca. She provided you all of her information. Was there any other websites or anything else that we needed to support you on, or where we could go find you? Anything else, or did you share
Um,
that information all already?
I think I covered most of it. I mean, the books are Until Your Worth, Until Your Self-Love, Until Your Best Life, and Until Your Gratitude.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, make sure you get that out there. Everyone who is listening, make sure you go support Becca. She's doing some amazing work, some really important work that is important for even if you don't have a child, even if you don't have a child that's on the spectrum, if you don't have a child that's autistic, you may have someone in your family, you may know someone in your neighborhood, you may see someone that's out at the store, and now having listened to this episode, you are able to be more empathetic and be more understanding. So that's it for this episode, everyone. Thank you again for tuning in. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And the way that I end my episodes, always remember that when you master your mind, when you master your emotions, and when you master your assignment, you can live your purpose and live on purpose. Until next time, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.